Welcome to the Trinity Force Podcast. Yo, it's that Triforce cast beaming straight to your home. Grab a beer so we know Pone ain't drinking alone. Send an email, a quick tweet, just pick up the phone. Leave a message at the beep if you're a creep, watch your tone. Discuss the meta game, patch notes, whatever helps your stats most. Obi-Pone Kenobi is your last hope to snatch gold. So grab your headphones and join in the fun. We'll try enforcing some jokes and some cringeworthy puns. Yo, we can make it together, people. Trinity Force Podcast. These boys are second to none. Now that's the end of the intro. It's time we begun.
It is episode number 417 of the Trinity Force Podcast. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for listening and supporting us. I have been noticing this really awesome trend that all of you have been donating via Patreon and sending in donations, and they've been steadily coming in. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And because of that, we decided to bring on MarineRevenge, a.k.a. Todd, onto the podcast this evening to talk about top lane. So he actually came on and talked with Mitch about Garen specifically. He is a Garen main. Todd, say hello to the world.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
We are excited to talk about top lane with you. Now, we got to play some games with Marine this weekend, and he played a little bit of Zen, a little bit of Garen, and whatnot. So we got to see it all firsthand. But I have heard from Mitch and now from Punch that Garen episode is a really awesome episode. Like, there's you.
I had no idea that there was so much to know about Garen. It blew my mind.
I mean, I haven't listened back to it because I don't normally go back and listen to those, but my thoughts coming out of it were very, very, very positive. And obviously I spread that news, so I've been happy to hear the more people liked it.
Believe it or not, that could have been, 90 minutes? It could have been another 30, 45 minutes if I really wanted to talk about every detail.
Well, this is matchups,
this is part two. We're doing it right now. This is the the fourth quarter of this episode. So.
The overtime.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to try our best to talk about a lot of other champions than Garen. Now, while I don't mind you using Garen as a point of reference, I do want to use this episode as a way. Actually, you know what? Before I get into all that, Todd, I'd like for you to tell people more or less your credentials and give them a reason why they want to listen to your advice.
I gotcha. Basically, I've been playing the game since Season 1, so a really long time. Most of the players who have picked up the game back then have quit. So I'm part of a ever-shrinking portion of the player base, who's basically seen every iteration of the game. I was Bronze Season 1, so, not too great, but basically I was Diamond 1, Season 3, 4. I Peak Master Season 5, and I've been Upper Diamond Season 6, and I'm climbing right now still in Season 7. So I've been Diamond for a long time, Peak Masters, just have a lot of experience.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I mean, I could pretty much just say you're a Masters level player, and everybody's like, "Oh, damn, that's awesome!" I want to listen to this guy talk. Now, we have amassed a bunch of questions that you people sent in. Say you people, you listeners have sent in via email, Twitter, and Reddit, and we're going to talk all those questions and some others that we had put together through that. And I think the first question we're going to start with is like a really broad question, and I'm also wanting anybody else on the show that's here to also chime in because I want to make this as a discussion, and Todd can chime in if we say something that might not be right.
Todd can tell us that we're wrong after we're done speaking. Right.
I do want to make this. I want to make this more of a discussion rather than just a strict interview style as well, if we can do that. But I kind of want to just start with picking up top lane or mating top lane. We happen to talk to a lot of the majority of our listeners are silver gold level players or lower, right? And you got the sprinkle of plat and diamonds in there as well, but there has to be like a general approach that you take to top lane if you ever get switched there for 5's team or decide you want to play it. And I kind of want to start there, if we can just kind of like talk about some generalities of how we're going about into every matchup depending on no matter what champion you're playing.
It's also worth noting that like the majority of players in general are gold, silver, and lower, not just our listeners. So we're not taking a dump or anything.
I guess the first thing I would say is finding a champion you're comfortable on is probably the most important step. If you look at the trend of players turn professional, they were pretty much all known for one or two specific characters at one point, usually in the beginning of their career. And that's usually because practice makes perfect. In a game with so many characters, the best way to get better at it quickly is to pick one and stick to it. And I think the top lane especially, reinforces that idea. There's just so many matchups, you have to learn them all, and mastering all of them with one is the best way to carry that knowledge over to other characters.
So when I first swapped to top lane, I was kind of overwhelmed, and this goes right into what Todd was saying. I was kind of overwhelmed, like the number of champions I could actually choose from, since AD carry is such a limited role in comparison. It's like, well, I could really play any of these champions that I had no business playing before, and they all have different playstyles too. You got AD, AP, ranged, melee, initiators, split pushers, flankers, the whole kit and caboodle, right? So I kind of just went hog wild and played a bunch of different ones until I found a few that I enjoyed playing and had success with.
Until you found Aurelia?
Aurelia would be one of those. Actually, when I started out, I played a lot of Jace just because of the natural transition from AD carry. It's like, hey, this guy is AD and ranged, so he's kind of similar. But yeah, eventually I found a few that worked out, and I kind of specialized in those.
It's probably the best way to start, right? It's just pick what you're comfortable with and play it through. I know whenever I try to play, I use the main top lane until I switched to AD carry in season 6 and kept playing through that because I found that, like Todd said, you pick one champion, you play it, and I found Jhin and just decided to ride him all the way through solo queue. But I think the biggest thing that I ever had a problem with, and hopefully Todd can talk a little bit more about this, is just playing the first few levels up. Especially I always feel like every time I do a replay review, level 1 is the thing that I talk to people about the most. I probably spend a solid 10 minutes talking about how wave manipulation in level 1 and level 2 really plays out. So I guess I'm going to leave the floor open there if anybody can jump in here and talk about it. Just playing out the level 1 and level 2 on a top lane.
Level 1 top lane is really important for a lot of matchups. If you're a champion who is in a losing matchup, it's really important to let the opponent try to shove you in so you have that defensive advantage near the turret, so you're less susceptible to ganks, which can, offset, your weak advantage, and to the counter to that, if you're in a position where you're in an aggressive matchup, a winning matchup, you don't want to get shoved in. You don't want to have to be focusing on the minions instead. You want to be in control of that wave. You want to be able to dominate the lane and deny vision to them and get your own vision up, which pushing the lane is really central to that. And that level 1 and 2 really sets you up. So if you have a bad trade level 1, you're either burning your potion or you're giving up that pressure 2 and 3. And there are certain matchups where maybe it was a winning matchup, but now it's not because you gave up that pressure. There's really a lot to it, but I think those are some of the big ideas.
This is one reason where specializing in just a few champions comes into play, because when you're taking somebody new into top lane, you're not always familiar with what those winning matchups are. So there's a lot of experimentation that you can do in the first couple levels to see, well, can I actually beat this? Like I'm taking Aurelia into top lane, right? Can I actually beat this guy at level 1 and 2? Most of the time, the answer to that is no. Aurelia is not good at level 1 and 2, which I learned. So you figure it out the more that you play those champions where, hey, I'm not going to win this one. I should back off now until level X.
Yeah, I also think that not necessarily on a level discussion, but more on the picking up a champion. I also don't think it's horrible to be more okay with dumping picks eventually. Like if you pick somebody up and you're like, I want to learn this champ, and it just doesn't go well for the first few games, you don't need to force it if it's not if it's an easy champion, you're not picking it up. That might be a sign. But I picked up Riven season 2 as my top laner at the time because I didn't want to play Aurelia anymore for whatever reason. And that one just clicked really quick. I did really well for that season with Riven. Haven't played her since, but you can kind of see, I think, within a couple games if your playstyle is going to fit. Because I like to be able to jump around and be more safe, I guess, even though that's an aggressive champion. You can see from my picks like Ari and Corki and everything.
You like characters with options. It's the same reason why you play Corki, because you have the ability to turn it on to get in and press W to get out as well. It's 100% falls on, does this champion mesh the style of play that you prefer to play? And if it does and you can make it work, play with it. Just play it until you know how to fight whatever you're going to end up fighting in lane.
I'd
The
like
only
to-
way you're going to get to that point is by playing a lot of matchups.
I'd like to add on to that and just mention how flexible the role diversity is in top lane. You have melee carries, you have melee tanks, and initiators. You have ranged utility champions, like Lulu, who can go top lane.
It has
you
the
have
most variation out of any lane, period.
you can really do anything you want top lane. That's what I really like about it so much. So no matter what role you want to fulfill in the game, there's a character that fits it. And once you find that character, sticking to it and learning the rest of the role, once you've found the champion you want to play, is the fastest route to improving.
That also speaks to the number of matchup. Like it's not only this huge champion pool you can choose from, right? It's this huge champion pool that you have to play against and learn to play against. And if you're playing a bunch of different champions against a bunch of different champions, it's going to take you longer to learn that laning phase and that matchup. If we go back to levels 1 and 2, it's gonna be a lot harder to learn what to do in levels 1 and 2 if you're all across the board. I think that was another big change from going to bot lane to a solo lane, right? Is the number of matchups just increased dramatically. I actually had to start keeping track of matchups in a spreadsheet to see, all right, who can I beat with what champions? Because you just see so many different ones. It's hard for me to keep track of what I should be doing in this situation.
Yeah, even if you pick the same AD every game, your support's going to be different, and their support's going to be different. So it's not just the AD matchup. You're talking about 2 matchups there at the same time. Bot lane's really complex.
I think this transitions pretty well into your first question if we're wanting to go there.
Sure, I wasn't necessarily going down the line in questions, so ask away.
How do you beat a ranged top lane if you're melee? And I think this is a fun question because it can be incredibly frustrating for somebody who's not used to playing that kind of. If you're used to playing mid lane and seeing mage versus mage, and then you go top and and you're like, I'll play a tank because I think I understand how this works. And then you have like a Quinn just beating on you for like 20 minutes, and you're like, well, that was not very fun. I don't understand what I should have done better there, but I just lost very, very hard. I think a lot of people don't understand the right times to go. Like you have to play around your windows of opportunity in those situations because those ranged top laners are weaker if you're standing next to them.
If you
they
get to
should
them.
lose that fight.
Yeah.
It's the whole point of the ranged top differential, I suppose. But Todd, if you've got some better insight as a Garen player, I bet you have played against some ranged characters before.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to play him against ranged. I mean, you pretty much nailed it. I mean, if you get that all-in off, you win the all-in typically. The early laning is really brutal. You have to look at winning not as getting ahead, but staying even in a matchup that favors you so poorly. You're winning the game when you get to team fights on even footing, and now their disadvantage of maybe too many range characters. Maybe their team comp is suffering for that.
They're too squishy.
Yeah, exactly. Their team comp is suffering, and that can be your winning play is just not getting behind early. If you play that melee champ that can all in, you look for that all in, and a lot of the range characters are really susceptible to ganks too. So call your jungler.
Call your jungler. Utilize the bush. Like you can, especially if they don't end up warding it, and you can pop in and out of the bush as you need to CS, so they just can't get free pot shots off on you the entire time you're standing in lane as well. That's really, really important.
Well, that wanted me to lead. I was going to lead into a question with the bushes, and I was actually curious, how often are you using the bushes in top lane?
Quite a lot, especially on Garen, since he works so well. It sort of depends what champ you're playing. There are some characters who just can't do anything with the bush, like Trinity can't really do anything with it, and he's a champ I like to play sometimes. But if you have a big hard-hitting burst, or if you have a CC that's really easy to land, that it's really difficult to react to if you can't see it coming, so that that vision bush denial, a lot. And then actually getting them to ward the bush, like Chiro was saying a second ago, if you get them to do that, that's a ward that they can't ward the river
Used to
now.
defend from
Yes,
junglers.
exactly.
That's huge. Yeah.
So forcing that ward because you're denying their poke is actually really valuable. And if that happens, tell your jungler that they just burn their ward, there's no vision top, and now you almost have a guaranteed gank.
I mean, and again, you can't always bank on a jungler like listening to any little thing, but junglers, at least the ones that are paying attention, thrive on any little bit of extra information that you can provide them. And if they're not aware that happened, they can't help you either. Like they won't know necessarily to help you, and that can pay off dividends if you can just communicate that.
To go back to the range versus melee for a second, Todd, I noticed in your podcast it sounded like you preferred a more offensive build, particularly with Garen. Do you find yourself? Do you ever find yourself building more defensively in general and playing against a ranged champion as melee?
In my early buys, yeah. Especially against range characters, one of the things that's most important is you can't let them get the boot advantage. So I try to get my boots on my first back to offset, give it that gap closing.
You don't want to give them an extra step to poke either.
Yeah, exactly. And if I'm against an AD top like Quinn, I'll get those tabbies right away, or a AP top like Swain, maybe Merc Treads. If they ever get boots too before you do as a melee, you should just give up all hope of closing that gap, because their one big weakness, the move speed disadvantage, is no longer there.
It's interesting you bring up boots, because I'm going to go back and talk about replay reviews again for a second. For those of you that don't know, we do replay reviews every month for people that want to get them taken care of. And I've noticed that a lot of people don't buy even rank 1 boots for a while. And there's a lot of times, like I said, I'm a bottom lane main. I'll go back and I will sacrifice upgrading into my step item, kind of, a Caulfield's or whatever it may be, and instead buy just like a longsword and boots, because I like the move speed advantage over my opponent for outmaneuvering them. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because I don't think I've ever heard any top laner talk about buying boots early or buying boots really at all. Like, no one ever talks about them, right?
Yeah, it's kind of an overlooked piece of information. I guess a lot of people take it for granted. They see like the boot move speed, and people don't even consider boots as a starting item. But actually, on Garen, I'll start boots against range tops, 4 out of 5 times. You can still get 4 potions, and that move speed, gets you into the CS and gets you out before you've taken too much poke. I think boots are really underrated. And in that melee versus tops, versus ranged situation, melee is different, but.
Well, speaking to melee, I guess that turns into the question. I noticed that, like, for bottom lane, for example, we'll use that as a point of reference, is that a lot of people are now building longsword 3 pots to start, because it builds you into your first step item more quickly than Doran's Blade does. A lot of people have the question, when am I starting my potion? When am I starting the corrupting potion? When am I starting cloth? And when am I starting Doran's? You get the idea.
Mm-hmm. I guess it depends. This is kind of a broad question, so I'll try not to talk for too long. But it's sort of just
paint with wide strokes. It's fine.
It sort of just depends, like, what type of character you're playing and what your item goals are. If you're playing a really aggressive, early dominating, pushing hero, you're going to get a lot of value out of the Doran's lifesteal and flat stats. But if you're playing a champion who maybe needs more sustain, and is in a position to where they're not going to be able to shove the lane a lot, like on Garen, he's kind of a weak shover, and he doesn't really auto attack a lot based on how he uses his abilities. His spin, disables his auto. So in those situations, if you want that early physical damage start, the longsword's way better. If you are thinking about cloth armor, you should be a champion who is going to want to build that cloth armor into something somewhat early in the game, whether that's like a Sunfire cape or whatever it may be. And you want to reserve that for you're against an aggressive physical damage laner like Renekton or Riven or Darius. Boots, against ranged characters or maybe against skill shots. Someone like Jace, who a lot of his damage comes from his skill shot poke. Boots can be really valuable against those kinds of champs. And Dorian Shield, pretty much never. I think that one's just off the table.
Also worth noting that the corrupting potion is pretty easily solved. If you aren't playing somebody with mana, it's probably not going to do as much for you as you might like.
Yeah,
even though I love corrupting potion on a lot of, like, on Nautilus or Maokai, but yeah, I mean, if you're playing characters like you play with Garen and Trinity, unless that corrupting potion gets changed to add rage to
you never want that really
to Trinity. It's not going to do too much.
Yeah, corrupting potion's a weird one. It's really expensive, and it's potions all game long, but it doesn't build into anything. And It's really strong when it's more than just the sustain. When you're trading with it active, it's really powerful. But if you ever get forced to burn it and you don't get to trade while it's active, you lose that damage, and you lose, and then you end up really being behind other people in early starts. I'm not too sure how I feel about corrupting, but I don't play a lot of characters who get to use it. I don't.
If you're not able to use it to get the burn off on people, and you're just using it to give you health back like a potion, you have bigger issues.
Yeah, I think it's
you
not
have
very
really
good
big
in those
issues.
situations.
What's an attrition item? Like it's in matchups where you're going to be trading a bunch as opposed to trading like in bursts. I would say like extended trades will benefit
and
corrupted significantly.
This is big. Be aware when the enemy top laner buys one, because if they have it, you shouldn't get in extended trades with them as soon as you see them pop it. You don't want that.
Yeah, you want to trade it like a
off.
cooldown. If you see it pop, you back off until it's expired.
Yeah, I mean that. This is the deeper conversation I expected about corrupting potions.
It's the poor man's early Ghost Blade that isn't nearly as good.
Okay.
I mean, it's an active that it's scary if you're not paying attention to use it.
Right.
So just stay away from it.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I know a lot of this is going to be, again, painting with broad strokes just because we're not specifically talking about Garen or any one champion, but I do want to talk a little bit about timers in top lane. In the past, we have previously told people that if they're playing top, about 250 is about the time you have to start looking out for ganks in the game. But are there other timers, or is there anything you can think of, like timing-wise, when it comes to top lane? Like time you want to have the tower down, time you want to try to roam, time you're looking for jungle gank specifically, anything like that?
So I think it just depends on where the enemy jungler started. The one thing you really have to watch out for early on is when the enemy top laner enters the lane is really, really important. If they're at the lane at 140 when the minion wave gets there, or any time before that, then you know that their jungler didn't start on that side of the map. If they're late to lane by about 5 to 10 seconds, they probably leashed for their jungler, and then you want to be paying attention to what direction they came from. If they came from their side of the map, they probably leashed for their jungler at their buff. You can expect that their jungler is probably ganking bot lane at that 250 mark, so you don't have to worry until later. But if you see them come from your buff, especially if they stole your jungler's red buff, then you almost want to put a word down right away, because you can sometimes get level 2 ganked at about 210. I've seen that happen quite a few times, especially if you don't take Ignite. People see that as an opportunity to punish you.
Is there a reason people aren't ganking you if you have Ignite? Are you able to... I can't imagine too many
you can just
turned around.
You can just burn teleport, and it sort of... Even if they get that kill, you're not set back too behind, because they can't back unless the jungler... I mean, if the jungler gets it, yeah, but the top laner can't back and spend that first blood gold right away if he doesn't want to give up all the pressure he might have just gotten if you teleport back to lane. But if you have Ignite or Exhaust, which a lot of Yasuos and Gangplanks run Exhaust, other people run Ignite, you're going to be late to lane, and they have time to buy. Right.
That makes sense. I guess that goes into the next question I had, specifically about Ignite and teleport and whatnot. The summoner spell landscape has changed quite a bit with the teleport changes this last season. And, when's it right to take what?
If you need to snowball and you don't synergize with teleport, then you should take Ignite. If you're a scaling champion and you don't want to take teleport, you should take Exhaust, because Exhaust has a lot of mid-late game potential in team fights. You'll see Gangplank and Yasuo take Exhaust because their early games are weak, and it can shut down a duel that they're losing to give them time to run away, and then they basically win all duels late game with Exhaust. But I'll take Ignite on a snowball champion like Riven or Garen or Darius, maybe somebody like that, if you don't want to take teleport, because they have a lot of kill potential early in the game that some of those scaling characters don't. Teleport is good if sorry, I'm not trying to monopolize the conversation, but just real quickly, teleport is good if you're a champ who doesn't have kill pressure in lane and doesn't have much use for Exhaust, like somebody who can't make plays off the Exhaust or go all in if they're exhausted. So teleport's good, so that you're probably a tank champion or a initiator, so you want to be able to be on the map when your team needs it.
Yeah, it's also the teleport pressure portion of top lane during the laning phase is kind of not something that a person without CC doesn't benefit from it very much. If they can teleport bot, but all you're bringing is damage, it's helpful, but it's not like Maokai jumps in or Nautilus jumps in with teleport and can lock down, deal damage, and literally make kills very easy.
Yeah, they changed that channel time on the teleport, right? It's like 4 seconds now, so
I think it's 5 now?
or 4 or 5.
It went up by 1.
4.5.
Okay.
So it's so telegraphed. So like you need either mobility or some kind of an engage tool to really make any use of teleport. And just using Garen as an example, that's why I don't use teleport on him, because he lacks both. It's just too long of a channel time for those kinds of champions now. Either your team didn't need you and you're overkill, or you can't get there in time to help.
When you're not an initiator, you become a lot more reliant on your team to set you up.
Yes.
Since that last change, the channel duration, and I think sometime before that, they increased the cooldown as well, right?
Yes.
Since then, it has become incredibly risky to use teleport to gank bot lane, which used to be a huge reason you take teleport, is because, yes, you take teleport so the bot lane can set you up and you could gank down there and you set bot lane ahead and everything's great. But now, with the increased cooldown and the fact that it's harder to gank bot lane with the channel duration, if you don't accomplish anything, if their enemy bot lane gets away, then not only is that just a draw on the bot, but you've just lost top. You're set so far behind in experience and CS, and there's a good chance that your opponent will actually take your tower too. At least in my experience, they do a lot of damage to that turret, which means you're going to lose first brick as well.
I've actually been in. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You go ahead. That's fine.
I was just going to add on to that and say I've actually been in matchups where I was losing and the enemy top does that, teleports bottom and gets nothing, and now I'm not losing anymore because I just got 2 or 3 waves. I've caught up in maybe that level or at gold disadvantage.
You see, these guys laugh at me for staying top lane too long, but that's why. Because if I leave with that teleport gank and get nothing, then it's over.
Overzealous teleports, like if they fuck you. Like if you do it before. If you do it early in the game at all, it completely throws everything off, because if the enemy top laner, even if you're ahead slightly, is able to make up for that CS advantage and then is able to get like half a level up on you, you're probably not going to win trades when you get back to lane, just because of the time it takes to back and then run all the way back there. You're pretty screwed.
And teleport's still fine for all the other reasons you might take it, like if you're a split pusher and you want to get a lane going and then make it back to your team as a flanker, or if you need to teleport back to stop a split pusher, if you're initiating tank and you can flank initiate, all those reasons in the mid game, it's still good. It's still a good reason to take teleport. But to gank bot lane, it's just
to gank bot lane, I agree.
Bot lane, but it's absolutely guaranteed that we get something.
That was one of the big reasons they nerfed it, I think, that it had too much impact in the bot lane, and I think that they definitely accomplished that. I do know that it's really... The one time I really regret not having TP is like the 35, 40-minute mark into the late game, and now their level 18 tank is slow pushing bot lane, and I can't solo kill them. And, and now they can TP to their team at Baron or wherever. That's the one time it really hurts. So I will say that, when you take Exhaust or you take Ignite, you're looking to end the game or looking to have that winning advantage before 35 minutes. I think that's when TP shows up strongest, is that really late game positioning.
Right.
Where one mistake is a team fight lost as an ace as you lose the game.
Yeah. Use that Ignite to snowball, because it does not scale well.
Yeah, you have to be planning to win early if you take that Ignite. But you know what? That's what solo queue is about too. Those games always make it to 45 minutes. A lot of people give up at 10 minutes, down 5 kills. GG, we lost. So, and if you're against a Riven players are statistically the most likely to rage quit. So I really like to take TP against those.
Well, let's talk about some matchup specific. not so much, again, Garen into it, but just kind of like playing into a Nasus or playing into a Riven. I think those probably are two of the champions that people have the hardest time with. Next, I would say is probably Trinity would be down that list as well.
There's a handful of champions that you always see in top lane, regardless of what the meta is. Riven is one of them. Nasus, Darius.
Right. So I think, general counters against Riven, if you're good with Renekton, if you're good with Garen, if you're good with, Trinity actually can do fairly well as well. It sort of depends on your elo range. It's kind of hard to say because a lot of matchups change as you go up higher or lower. Like I would say, Garen and Renekton do well against Riven in the bronze to gold platinum range, but in the diamond to master range, when the Rivens are just really quick on their animation canceling and just really good with their shield management, sometimes those matchups become even or maybe more in Riven's favor. But definitely somebody with early pressure tends to have a good chance against Riven because she is very weak to taking damage early in the lane. And when she doesn't have CDR, she is most vulnerable between abilities. Nasus is a win against him early character, or pick somebody who scales equally, or at least is immune to his split pushing. So again, those early brawlers like Darius, Lowy, somebody you can just like set up lane pressure and just deny him permanently. A weird pocket pick for some people might even be like Heimerdinger, somebody who's like really just anti-melee zone control.
Right,
Somebody,
if he walks in there, he's not going to have fun.
Not at all, yeah.
Right.
I don't know how people feel about picking Heimerdinger, like a really specialized pick to shut Nasus down, but if that's what you're looking for, that works great. I think Teemo is another one, believe it or not, that does really well against Nasus. An underrated item is Executioner's Calling. One of the things that makes Nasus so strong is his sustain in between waves and during waves after he finally has his Q stacks. So if you're an AD champion for 800 gold, pick up that Grievous Wounds, and that helps a lot for those trades.
More of another attrition situation, because you're not going to... and Nasus is always, I think, going to be attrition. It's not going to be I'm going to burst you down at level 5. I need to whittle down at him for a while to get him out of lane, or at least stop him from scaling so much.
So I think the bigger problem so much... when it comes to Nasus specifically, I see that question pop up a lot. Like, how do I beat Nasus? And I think the larger point to this isn't so much beating Nasus, but actually beating the enemy team. Because a lot of players will shut Nasus down early. Like, we see it a lot in Silver, Gold, and Plat. Like, you destroy that Nasus, but then he comes back and ends up, just killing everybody or one or two shotting everybody late game. And that's because they didn't play the map well enough, or they didn't roam or whatever. They didn't use their advantage and take the turret early when they had the chance. There's a whole bunch of other little things you can do in the game, but specifically to a lot of those champions, not so much Riven, but just playing the map rather than playing the matchup out of top lane does a lot more than what I previously said.
Yeah, same thing can be applied to I can't speak English. The same thing can be applied to playing against Darius. Like, Darius can be very oppressive for a lot of melee champions in the top lane, but if you just focus on staying even and then making plays elsewhere and avoiding the Darius, then you can still get your team ahead. You don't need to win the lane per se.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that, and I'd like to say that something that's really good is when you can no longer get a further advantage on the enemy top. Say you've taken their outer tower and now you're shoved in their inner turret and you don't have enough vision to safely be up that far because of their jungler. Try to get an advantage on either Dragon or the mid laner. If you get the mid laner, if you flash on a mid laner after you roam, you can get the mid tower, which is really, really, really important for map control. And if you can't get that, then you help your jungler set up for Dragon, and you win 4v3 bot side if the enemy top stays shoved in. You can also, against someone who has to perma farm like Nasus, try not to shove to his side of the map. Try to leave the wave frozen on your side of the map, because then he has to overextend a farm, and an underfed Nasus doesn't have any chance of surviving a 1v2 situation if your jungler roams with you to punish him for farming. Those are just some map tips.
Did you So speaking of taking the top turret, I've seen this question a couple times is like, when do I take my top turret? Or if I'm ahead, how long do I hold on to my top turret before I take it?
I like to take it ASAP if I can get the first tower gold. If you can't get first tower gold, then you pretty much take it as soon as you can either force the top laner to burn something for it in order to try and save it. So like either you're looking to put enough pressure onto the turret where they're afraid that you're going to take it to force them to use a teleport or something like that to keep it up, or you're looking to trade objectives if they teleport somewhere else on the map and say they go for dragon or bot tower. You take it when you need to trade objectives, or if they're stronger than you are and you're kind of weak, it's better to stay in lane and push the tower and keep farming than it is to try to follow your top laner if they decide to roam. So those are like 3 key points where you want to pressure the turret. Obviously, the sooner you get it, the better. There's not really a time where it's like, well, I can get it and I won't. Maybe you let it stay alive a few seconds longer. It'll kill a few more minions under the tower range, but that would be like the only situation you would delay.
Is there no time where you would zone the enemy champion out and force the enemy champion to try to make plays out somewhere else on the map, knowing that they're weaker?
I think when I'm like smurfing and low elo, that's like a good strategy, but I think the higher you rank up, the more important it is to just get that tower gold. And now the tower is not giving the enemy team vision on that part of the map anymore. They're also not safe in those areas, so you can get deeper wards. I think just having the tower or just having the pressure is more valuable than maybe being able to deny them a little bit more.
Well,
Yeah, I can't say ahead in my adventures against bronze to gold opponents. There weren't a ton of opportunities to completely freeze somebody out and flame horizon them, particularly when the opponents get better and better. So yeah, I kind of agree with Todd with what Todd is saying is that yeah, if you can completely freeze them out and deny them CS, that's fantastic. But
it's really
don't
hard
expect to be able
do
to do that against good players.
And at least not for them to not roam in an exchange. Like if you're freezing them out completely and they're like listening to this podcast, they'll go, oh well, I should just roam since I can't get anything top lane, and then and now you're giving up that pressure. So yeah, generally just try to get that first one as soon as possible.
I think it'd be really ideal if people were in the middle of playing their games, have us in their ears, like giving them advice.
I hear a lot of people do listen that way. Like
that's cool.
They'll jump into Discord and be like, "Oh, I was just listening to you guys and playing, and now I see you guys here. I want to talk." I'm like, "All right, cool."
Can you maybe envision a situation where they call for a pause and be like, "Hey, let me rewind real quick. I got to figure out what I'm supposed to do in this fight coming up."
Yeah, if only you could pause in solo queue, right?
Let me fast forward to the section where I learn how to beat Nasus.
Yeah, hold on. Pause.
Do we timestamp anything? Do we timestamp these? Because that would be potentially useful for this one.
I would love the timestamp, but I don't have the number of hours that it would take to sit down and do that.
Well, not for all of them. Not like lazy. From now on. Well, I'm not going to say, hey, Pone, you don't have anything to do. Go back and get 400 episodes worth of these timestamps.
No, this episode will be timestamped because I'll post this episode on the Summoner School. So hello, Summoner School.
Oh, cool.
Listeners who are out there and listening about top lane. I'm sure you've seen Marine off of our Garen mains as well. Go out and hang out over there. I hear it's a pretty good community. Todd says nothing. I won't say anything else.
Oh no, it's amazing. It's amazing. Get at me for an invite to our Discord. We got a bunch of awesome Garen players in there who are always trying to help people get better. So,
well, let's take we've answered a lot of the listener questions that came in just naturally by the way of conversation, but there is a couple other ones, we'll try to answer them as best we can. So RGBY Fiend had asked you, the jungler went assassin and the support is a mage. Should I play my favorite carry top or do I need to go tank for the team?
So I think it sort of depends. It depends more like, okay, so he's sort of onto the idea, which is he's looking at his team comp, but he needs to look at the enemy team comp too. If his team is a support is a mage and an assassin, and the enemy team is like a durable team that an assassin's not going to be able to just jump into them, then and you're worried about your team composition, then yeah, in that situation, maybe you're looking to play a more tanky, durable champion that can initiate and sit those important picks up for his team. But if the enemy team is like, double 80 carry, like Ezreal mid and a 80 bot, and they have a soft support as well, and maybe their jungler is maybe somebody in between, like an Elise or somebody like that, somewhat squishy, but not super squishy. And then, sometimes they build somewhat durable items. Then in those situations, your carry top laner is still okay because your team can already do what they need to do because either they have similar picks or they don't have champions that outright shut down what your team already has. It's kind of a broad question, but it really it depends not only what you have, but what the enemy team has too. If your team is severely lacking in something that your team needs, then go for it. But if your team is lacking in something and you don't particularly need it based on what the enemy team champion picks are, then I think you're really free to do what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, you can also look at what kind of hard CC you have on your team or might need, because if there's no one specific character that you need to be locking down, like you can go a bit more broad with CC, but if there's like the Vayne, Nautilus is going to be pretty good when you can just hit R on them really, really quickly. And I guess right click on them too, that'll lock them down for a little bit as well. But you can gauge what you need. Obviously it's based on that, but also like in so many different ways. Like it is a gigantically broad question, but just think about both sides of it, not just what your team needs.
The one thing I would add on is that I would never recommend that you play somebody you are very uncomfortable on just for the sake of team composition. I think it doesn't, solo queue is not that coordinated. You're better off picking a champ you're comfortable playing than listening to your teammates complain in the chat and say, we need a tank, please, pick something different. And then
especially when you can mute them.
Yeah, exactly. And get peer pressured into picking somebody you don't actually play. I think that hurts your chance of winning more.
Cool. There we go. Cool. The other question that we didn't get to comes from Spork V. He asks, what does a mid lane main need to do differently when he plays in top lane in terms of mechanics, specifically preparing for and escaping ganks, how to trade, etc.? I think we kind of went over this, but
a giant piece of this is just being more cognizant of the fact that you're in a longer lane and you don't have you like if you get stuck in that habit of being mid lane and knowing that you don't have to move as far of a distance to get back to your turret, your little safe spot, or you're playing, I mean, a lot of mid lane champs have dashes or certain gap closers or like ways to get places really, really quick. Not all top laners have that. And even if they do, the lane is way, way longer than it is in mid. So just like if you don't have stuff warded and you're pushing past that sort of midway point, things can get pretty bad if you're not paying attention. Another thing is just being cognizant of where junglers are and where they're not. If you see somebody pop up on the bot side, you know that you're going to be safe for like roughly a minute. It just keeping things like that is such a big difference when moving from one to the other.
Also, to speak to the shape of the lane, you also should be aware of the difference in ganking routes that are available to the enemy jungler. Like, lane ganking becomes a possibility in top lane, where that's not so much in mid lane. Coming behind you through the tri-bush, if you're on red side, you'll need to watch out for that. So, you gotta be aware of those different avenues as well. That kind of tells you where you need to ward.
Yeah, when you're playing a low mobility champion, and like a mid lane mage like Syndra, for example, and you're really overextended, something that you see happen in mid lane a lot is that people blow cooldowns, pretty much as soon as they're up because they're trading constantly. And so you get into that mentality where it's okay to just use your abilities as soon as you have them if you can hit the opponent. But top lane is a lot of mind games, and a lot of it is trying to force your opponent to use your cooldowns so you don't have to use yours, which makes them vulnerable, for a period so that their jungler can follow up. And if the jungler does in those situations, usually not much you can do. Except maybe burn flash, and depending how extended you are, usually that might not even be enough either. So I think people who play mid lane a lot need to go into it with the mentality that you're going to need to be a little bit more reserved with how you approach the matchup than maybe what you're used to.
Is there, so shifting gears into masteries for a moment, with the Courage of Colossus nerfs that's opened up top lane a bit, specifically for solo queue and hopefully pro play as well, are there any other changes to masteries or the like that you would like to see going here in the future?
I wish top lane had another mastery other than Grasp of the Undying. It got a lot of nerfs when it was first released, and now I think it's outshone by Courage of the Colossus. I think Bond of Stone is really underwhelming for top laners too. So I think there's like one good top lane tank keystone right now, but the only problem is not every top laner can proc it. So it's sort of, the tank tree is kind of undesirable past 12 points, honestly. I would like to see, yeah, I mean, that's really the only thing I would change about the mastery tree is I would give the last tree, the resolve tree, a replacement for Grasp, and maybe a replacement for Bond of Stone.
I'm pretty sure Bond is there. Somebody said somewhere that there's a change coming to that very soon. It's actually being looked at because it's just so outshone by Courage. Like there's almost no, I can't think of many champions except somebody who doesn't have hard CC, I guess, that wanted Colossus would take Bond of Stone. But I know you're a big fan of Storm Raider Surge, which is I think the most underplayed one. Maybe not anymore now with Bond of Stone and Fervor kind of seeming like terrible ones to a lot of people, but. Yeah, Storm Raiders is just so overlooked, I think, for a lot of people. They don't think of it because it's not just damage. I don't get it.
I think that's the reason why it's so overlooked is people don't value the mobility of it quite a lot for some reason. I think with Rise, we've seen the resurgence of Storm Raiders a little bit. There's also some Mordekaiser players in high elo that are running Storm Raiders.
We know who he is.
Yeah.
We know who Tasty Potato is.
Yeah, you guys know who Tasty is. I'll be at PAX with Tasty, by the way, this year. So if you guys are,
we're gonna see you there.
Say hi. We'll be there.
Awesome. So there are Storm Raiders is definitely good. I think the only reason we don't see it more is it's hard for tanks. It's hard for pure tanks to proc it. I think that's why we don't see it top lane too much. Fervor is really good right now, though. Have you guys tried Darius Fervor? You get like 400 attack damage with only Cleaver at level 18.
Balanced.
If you have Fervor and passive fully procced, yeah, dude, it's super balanced.
Yeah, super. That's nuts.
I've been playing a lot of KO with Fervor.
Kale is nasty with it. Dude, Renekton's nasty too. Renekton will get 3 procs with a W. Riven's use it right now for extra burst on the ultimate. They got like 120 AD coming out of the ult plus the Fervor passive. It's pretty nuts. Fervor's really good top lane right now. I think that's the problem with the Keystones is top lane is people really see the damage ones as being vulnerable or being viable, and I think that's why Courage was so good is because there's like no other good tank Keystone. I don't know.
Oh, Todd and I just tried to talk about the word viable here shortly.
Yeah, I just went. I googled Bond of Stone and hit the news tab, and I found 0 things related to League of Legends, which I guess I shouldn't be surprised by because Google's not just about League of Legends. So now I have to go try to find what I was actually referencing.
You should probably go to Surrender at 20, hit the PBE tag on the right. Side.
Already did that first. That was the first thing I did.
Then there's no changes. Rip.
There's no changes. All right.
So besides the Courage of Colossus nerf. That thing called lethality, lethality. I think that's how you pronounce it. That thing that nobody bought before. Yeah, that's all of a sudden pretty good now. You have any indication of how that might change things up in top lane besides making Garen better?
Besides that, well, I don't want to give any secrets away now. Come on, it's a new patch. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean Wukong. I played against Wukong in solo queue right before we started the podcast. I have seen, you're just seeing a lot more of those assassin bursty AD tops that maybe we weren't seeing before. We're seeing a resurgence of AD Renekton. We're seeing Wukong. We're seeing some of the assassins like Talon show up top lane. I think on Champion GG, Talon has like a 53% win rate topside right now, which is pretty strong.
My goodness.
And he can roam just as well top lane as he can mid because he can jump down one side of the jungle and then just come back up the map on the other side. It's pretty scary. So
I
I
don't
think
care
we're
what you
just going to
say.
see.
I'm still under the impression that Talon is a sack of shit and is awful champion, so that's fine.
I don't think lethality is going to affect top and pro play too much. I think we're still going to see like the tanks up there. I think we'll see probably more AD style junglers though. I think the junglers are going to start taking advantage of the lethality a lot, especially since Poacher's dagger has lethality on it too, doesn't it? Just like the serrated Dirk.
And it
Yeah.
upgrades
But
into
becomes
serrated
serrated Dirk.
Yeah, if they were hoping Lee Sin was disappearing, I think they're going to be disappointed. I think he's
Well,
more
and-
Kha'Zix.
And lethality had a bigger than that. It also changed bottom lane. ADC Ziggs is completely off the map now, and everybody's starting to go back to the traditional AD carries, specifically ones that could run AD early, or excuse me, lethality early.
I've seen Lucian in solo queue again, which is it's been a while.
I played Lucian the other day. He actually felt pretty good to play with the lethality build again, and not to mention Edge of Night is overpowered as fuck right now, and that really helps the AD carries a ton.
I think they're going
just,
to revert that
just-
nerf ASAP.
They have to. It's so broken.
Just a quick note: Poacher's Dirk does not have lethality. It just has AD and out of combat move speed. It does get it when it turns into serrated Dirk, of course. But
I gotcha.
just making sure we're good there.
Yeah, I wasn't actually sure offhand if it did or not.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there's the lethality. Humorously, I saw a post earlier where someone was like, lethality feels so strong, and it made me laugh because we've been playing with 100% armor penetration for 6 seasons now. Then they change it and it comes back. People are like, damn, this is really strong. Well, you did catch that 6 seasons ago and it was better.
What's kind of I was just about to say what's kind of interesting is that it's still not as good as the flat armor pen was. Well, you get like 19 from runes and you get 24 lethality. So it's like, lethality is stronger like 13 to 18, but people are complaining in these mid-game fights, about the mid-game power when it's weaker than the old version. I think a lot of it's overblown. I think people see the patch notes and, they're quick to latch on to an easy excuse for why they've lost. So I think we need to wait and see. I do think Edge of Night is broken, but I think lethality is fine.
I agree with that. Edge of Night is 100% broken. You can go. What's really nice is Lucian right now can go Yumu's Edge of Night. Then you can go like Black Cleaver, or if you're ahead, you can go into Essence Reaver or Eye Edge. You get that mid game build path. But Edge of Night just makes it so easy for him to just engage in a fight and just blow somebody up through a combo. It's sick. So if you're not building Edge of Night second on, I think Jhin build path right now is actually Yumu's Edge of Night, Essence Reaver, Eye Edge, one of the two. So if you're not building Edge of Night right now on AD carries that are in the fray, you should probably look at your build path.
I mean, the hard counter to this is just to stay under leveled so that lethality does less to you.
That's a good point.
Totally. Good point. Just let the emulator win, right?
You can get those minus percent experience quints. Just put those under your character.
People just have to
instead.
learn to play against it.
Yeah.
Miss
I
out
think
some
we're
experience.
just
You'll
don't
be
get
fine.
I mean, I'm not an AD carry player, but I think what's really underrated is just getting one defensive component for a couple hundred gold, like just sitting on a chain vest, like just getting the one that you really need, or a Negatron. I think GA is still a strong item. I mean, there's been some discussion about maybe the AD carry role being spoiled and never building any defenses at all if they situationally
No.
need it.
Not AD
Which-
carries.
I think there's a
Never
little bit
seen that
merit to
ever.
that, honestly. I mean, because you see top, mid, and jungle all situationally rush a defensive item if they really get behind. I don't know if that would make a difference, but one armor item. I mean, my point with this is one chain vest. Really offsets lethality's power through most of the early and mid game.
I think the counterpoint to that is to just have better positioning, so you don't get hit. You don't need that chain vest. That really comes. I think that's what.
Of course it is, as an AD carry main.
Exactly.
I
Get
I
good.
understand your point.
The point is get good.
The defensive
Yeah.
I'm
item
not
that people are
arguing with that either.
no.
but
The
I think-
defensive item that people are building now though is Edge of Night, because you have to build a no magic mantle to build into that. So it's like building your Q. Potentially building a QSS. Early, so I see your point of view. I think there's the only item you could build into is an AD carry is Dead Man's Plate. They
were building steraks gauge for a while, and I mean, it was only on the base AD. What are you getting, like 20 AD maybe on an average AD carry in the later levels, maybe 20 AD.
right.
And I mean, people were willing to spend 2,600 on that. Why not spend 800 on a chain vest and put the other 1,600, 1,800 gold into a BF sword and a long sword or something?
Todd, you gotta
that's kind of the way I see it. Because you won a GA, right? 6 item, and GA still good.
You're not going to be able to convince 80 carry people not to build more damage.
Yeah, that's
as
the
evidenced
problem.
by Adam just not gonna
You just feel like you're
budge on
delaying
this.
your damage too much, and people are already complaining about damage not being enough in 80 carries. I mean, yeah, lethality makes it a little bit better, but I'm not going to keep delaying. If I'm ahead, I'm not going to try to get more ahead, right? And
Yeah.
building a
80 carries
defensive
are so
item stops
weak
me from
this
getting ahead.
season.
It's only like a niche suggestion. Like Rengar's got 2 lethality items, and you're 0-2,
I'm
and
fucking dead anyway.
you're getting
At
one
the
shot
same time, though,
back to back.
buying that chain vest early is still so less effective than on champions that have a health pool that can actually utilize the defensive stats as well. I mean, it's the small health pool in itself makes that stretch a little less, but I mean, if that's the difference, that's the route you need to go. And the fact that GA is on the route to it is still decent.
I'm gonna need some numbers ran here. That's the only way you're going to convince me ever to potentially.
The
do
only
that.
reason I even bring it up is like when I play like full damage Garen, and I'm thinking like, I'm just really weak right now, and I'm losing these one-on-one trades against my physical damage lane opponent. Is that pickaxe that I want to build into my Last Whisper going to help me win this, or maybe if I just build that chain vest, maybe that extra durability, I win that trade, and I feel like some of that maybe carries over, maybe it doesn't. I'm not an 80 carry expert.
I'm going to say it doesn't as much just because of Garen's base health pool as it is anyway. Like that in itself makes up a giant difference in the fact that that's that much more damage that's going to be mitigated for the cost of that item. I mean, it's going to be like 1,000 health.
Todd thinks this way because he's an enlightened, learned top laner. Whereas the 80 carries, it's always somebody else's fault. I mean, you can blame support.
They have
You can blame the mid for not calling missing. You can blame the jungler.
Sean
You can
is
blame
on the right
Riot
path.
for making a bad game.
I just
actually-
thought because Steraks Gauge was so popular that maybe there was a niche for physical or for defense on 80 carries somewhere.
You're on the
I
right
know. I
path
have the
there
answer to
with
this.
it.
I have the answer to this, Adam. The answer is Todd is correct because Riot's been pushing this since the beginning because the tutorial makes you play
Anyway,
Ashe
I'm
and
ignoring
build
it
a
now.
Thornmail as the only item you could possibly get.
I think
They
you're on the.
told you the answer the whole
We
time.
have previously talked about steraks and all of that, and if we're going on the path, and I'm just assuming that we're going down the right path, just for the sake of conversation, that you're actually better with effective health on the 80 carry early to mid game than you are with a chain vest, just because your health pool is so much smaller than everybody else. The mitigation isn't worth the extra
So it
money
was
you're
a
putting
more
into.
efficient.
So the
I can
health
see
becomes
that.
more efficient, and that's why steraks is better, right? So yeah,
Was.
like to your point, steraks becomes better because you get the effective health in AD over sitting on just raw defensive stats.
I could see that. Well, I guess all I would say then is that this, in light of all that, armor is still really, really effective against lethality right now. Lethality doesn't scale
Bring it
against
back
it
around.
as well as percentage armor pen. So actually, it doesn't scale against it at all. So it's compared to cleaver or like a Last Whisper item, building armor is just slightly more effective against lethality.
So I think we're gonna actually end it there. We've talked quite a bit about top lane, and then I think we ended it with a really good conversation about lethality and how that affects everything. So Todd, I actually want you to take a moment and tell anybody where they can find you if they want to. Do you have a Twitch, a Twitter, any way that they can get more information out of you?
Yes. Should I provide the links somewhere, or should I just read them out?
Just say them now, and then I'll provide them in the description as well.
Okay. If you are interested in watching me play gameplay live, you can find me at twitch.tv/MarineRevenge. If you want to see my YouTube highlights or past gameplay, you can find me at youtube.com/MarineRevenge. If you're interested in live updates, you can find me at Twitter at twitter.com/moonmarooned, one word. And we have a Garen Mains Discord, which you can get an invite to on the subreddit r/Garen Mains.
Very cool. Thank you. You know what, Marine Todd? I know I've been calling you Todd all the time, but also people need to know you as Marine. I really appreciate you coming on here and also doing the Champion Select episode. I think you have imparted quite a bit of knowledge. I know you made me think about a couple things, and
So much knowledge.
It's nice. It's nice to have a fresh perspective of a lane. So
Well, it was really an awesome experience for me, and I really had fun doing it. So let me know if there's ever a place for me on here again. I'd be happy to come back.
Excellent. Guys, that is episode number 417 of the Trinity Force podcast. Again, thank you everybody for listening, supporting us. Please go check out Marine and all of his videos and whatnot that he has out there. I know he loves to teach and he's very educational. I'm sure we'll have him back on here in the, I would say, near future. So, guys, check us out, TrinityForceNetwork.com. We will see you all on Wednesday with patch 7.3. Is that right?
Yeah,
That would be
the
it.
next one.
Yeah, so that should be out by Wednesday. Guys, we'll have that episode for you Wednesday. Peace.
See you guys.